going on here, everybody? Goose out the 13th, a new video talking about the F90 MZ type, the latest suit for GBO2 as of the 8th of May 2025. So raid 3-star for both space and ground with space compatibility here. This weapon setup though, very interesting right out the bat because this is actually a beam machine gun. It has two different burst types, one that's charged, one that isn't, and I will say that the accumulation between the two, not super different. Focus fire offers increased range and power. Doesn't really say anything about actually accumulating a bit more, which is a bit of a shame because that means that your main instant stun is actually going to come from the lumbar grenades, and the only one that actually does immediate stun is actually the anti-MS grenade launcher, so the regular ones. You do have chain explosions. This one does accumulate pretty fast. And the last ones must have fire ammo fired, I believe, suppressive effect temporarily lowers enemy mobility on impact. So it's interesting because that's a bit, what's the word? In fact, this one might be the one that stuns, but this one actually has like a slowdown effect, kind of like if you were shooting bird lime at somebody. In general, the range on these is 250 meters. All of them are for ammo. Cooldown time on these is 0 except for the suppression one, which is 4 seconds. And that's actually the fastest reloading one at 8. Both of these are surprisingly high, so 12 seconds for the anti-mobile suit, and then the chain explosions is actually 18. Everything on this except for the beam machine gun are at ammo range or ammo based. The head Vulcans are actually 2-shot per interval, 200 range, 80 and 60 ammo. They actually accumulate some pretty good, which thank goodness, because once we get into the skills, you're gonna see why I'm kind of harping on that right now. But you do have a heavy attack on this, and the pattern on the melee itself is pretty nice. 2900 baseline damage for the melee itself. Not awful, but I feel like there's probably some other examples at this cost line that are a little bit higher than that, which kind of makes me a little concerned for just its general output and whatnot. This actually, surprisingly, and we should mention this right out of the gate, the MZ type, for the first time in years, actually comes with its level 2 pre-packaged in the gacha list. So when you're spinning on that banner, you're actually not only just shooting for the level 1, but potentially the level 2. That goes up to 750. And from what I saw, just doing a little bit of back and forth, the MZ actually was more prominent in 750 because the 750 cost line hasn't really had anything contributed to it. And in fact, I want to say, and we can double check in a second, but the new banner for the G, like a reroll on the G, is actually here, and that I want to say was only for the level 1 coming back. In fact, I wonder if that's even going to be counted as a new monthly mobile suit. So XZ. Yeah, so as you can see, it's still only the level 1, which I was surprised at. I was like, oh, maybe they're finally adding the level 2. This one's going to be really hard to get again. And so they're going to give a special banner for that. But if we back out real quick, two things happened. First of all, there was a really long 10-stepper for that. And I wonder, yeah, it's back. Okay, so for a little bit, this disappeared. Thank goodness. I mean, it's back now. So you get a guaranteed on one of the defensive custom parts. The 10-step is just an extra cosmetic, and if you want to just get it again, which again, because it's not the level 2, I guess you're just getting it for the upgrade on top of the cosmetic, which is just like a little holstered gun or whatever. And you get a 4-star mobile suit guaranteed in there as well, but that pool has only gotten bigger, so to be honest, just get to the 7, you at least get the part if you really want this. It's interesting that we're having a chance at this in a time where we're getting a new, like a brand new 700 suit. that's a raid, and you definitely are seeing them because they have a lot of good tracking. And this thing, the MZ is actually a flaps enabled suit, so it is going to be running around in the air and doing what it has to do in that regard as well. All right, let's get back in here and we'll take a look at the rest of this stuff. I just wanted to mention that because for a little bit it seemed like something had happened. But yeah, beware of that while you're getting into doing stuff with this suit. So, stats and skills, pretty decent across the board here. 21k health. Beam, ballistic, and melee are 20, 26, and 32 respectively, so generally low on the defensive side. Typical raid shit, right? Not a really big bulky boy. It's a miniaturized suit to begin with because it is an F90. The range strength is 25, which is interesting considering how much of this is just range based, especially when these three are stop and fire. You cannot fire any of those mid-air. This is not the F91 where you at least have the ability to lean on the Vesper cannons in free fall or whatever. So you're gonna be, you know, going between mostly the Vulcans and the beam machine gun while you're in the air trying to handle things and pursue and like run your support target down. But melee strength is a baseline 45, not too bad there. Movement speed is 140, top speed is 225, so pretty zippy. Thrust gauge is 75 right out of the gate, so you don't really have a lot of wiggle room to, you know, you don't really have to do too much more work to get more out of that. I would say if you have auxiliary burners or special fuel or whatever, that's a very good choice for this, just so that you can stay in the sky longer. And the turning speed is 81. Hell yeah. Not having to work harder to try to get a decent responsive bit of turning out of this. And obviously the older F90s are similar. But it just makes me happy. I'm really looking forward to the point where we're seeing a lot more suits that average around this much speed and can just kind of do more and be faster. Assault booster level 3, high spec ambec level 2, maneuver armor level 4. So consecutive stun is actually reduced, and damage taken is reduced by 30 while moving. Melee composite system. So 2 attack melee combo, damage is reduced during combo attacks from when you're trying to respond out of jumping or high speed movement. Aerial melee system, force injector 3, you have a heavy attack like I mentioned earlier. Electronic absorber 4, emergency evasion system 2, so you actually get 2 rolls out of this bad boy. Flight control program 4, anti-blast stabilizer, thank goodness obviously because that is a raid. This is where things get a little bit weird. So it flies. You're doing a lot of pursuit stuff, and when we get to some of this, you'll understand why it's a little bit weird. So active guard, able to obviously cancel out. It's level 3, so you're not just getting into it. You're actually able to cancel out of like melee and all this other crap because you have interrupt guard. So now we're getting into the territory of like G first kind of stuff, where you're doing big attacks, you're canceling out of things just in case. And I think they realize because 700 does have the F90 and a lot of other faster stuff that's come out, or just a lot of things that can really scrap this shit because it's got like barely over 20k health and generally low defense while having a lot of type disadvantage against most of the shit that's at this cost. It needed more ways to defend itself once it actually commits to stuff. Flight booster 2, and then we get to a mobile fire system, obviously for the lumbar, right? But I will say most of these are generally pretty fast. You're not really protecting yourself too much out of this. It's very coincidental defense. A lot like the PZZ, but the PZZ even at least has the shoulder cannon burst firing mode, which does leave it in there for like a second or so. These don't take that long. These are a lot snappier unless you're dealing with latency. But nice to have, because it is going to have to use that in order to do a lot of its damage at range before it's actually even able to, you know, come in. Because when it's trying to come in for its melee, it's doing so more often than not either with its Vulcans or in a more scavenger style where it's already got its shit charged up, someone else knocks something over, you know, and it's coming in bah, 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 because the animation for the heavy attack on this thing is really long, super long. The only other thing you'd probably be doing is maybe building up with the Vulcans in, you know, intervals, because we're going to be getting into the OS type. So much like the other F90 that had the Amro type, this is the Char Aznable type 3. So when at 80% HP or less, OS limiter is released only once to activate this skill for 60 seconds. Keep that in mind. Just because it's pop doesn't mean you're always going to be like this. When activated, mobility and thruster recovery increase. Stagger from cumulative damage is reduced. In addition, your primary range weapon can be used during high-speed movement. So now you have, you know, mobile firing, all that shit. Partially nullify enemy melee resistance to deal damage with a melee attack. Nullifies all reactions, so you know you get out of jail free card when you first get popped. But yeah, you can actually bring your machine gun into the mix here. And I will tell you, you can do it in a combination of machine gun into Vulcans. Obviously, the Vulcans, honestly, will get in there a little bit faster. There is some ASL on this. You do have a little bit to work with. 350 is not a bad range for this. But in a lot of instances, because there's so much damage control at this cost, the machine gun is gonna... You either have to really hammer through that heat rate, because it's a low heat rate. You can get a good few bursts out of this thing. Or you're gonna really have to hope that you do like maybe a couple pumps of this and then just lay into this and just hope that you get there, you know, stun-wise by the time you reach your target. The problem, of course, with that is that even though we do have flight control 4 and stuff that reduces thruster use, you're still burning through a lot to keep up with a lot of the shit that's at this cost, because everything else at this cost, you know, has a fair amount of boost and is generally pretty fast. That also includes a lot of the things that are going to be vanguarding whatever support targets you're going to be going up against. But we'll talk about that a little bit more once we get into practice. Right here we have the upgrades. So anti-melee reinforcements, so +1 to melee resistance, +1 to melee modifier, -3% to recovery time for thruster overheat, which that's nice. Conflicts expansion at the very end here for 2670, only +1 for all those. We're not really getting a lot of level 2s for these, which is kind of frustrating at this point. Like, why even bother? Anti-melee armor reinforcements, so +5 to melee resistance, and +5 to melee modifier at the end for the unlockables. This one goes all the way up to 8010. How nice. Yippee. So, when I was going through this, Asian was saying that, like, F90 feels a lot like what the Rikazee price should be, kind of fused with some other suits, and I can agree with that to a certain extent. But I will say that if they just gave the Rikazee flight control and maybe immobile firing for its missiles, it would probably be the better of the two suits. I don't even really necessarily need the aerial melee. It would be nice, and it could probably definitely do it. But the pattern and the way that it does damage and stuff is a lot faster in some respects than this thing, and you'll see a little bit of what I'm talking about once we get in here. Let us load faster, please. I'd appreciate it. Come on! Please, get over there. Okay, we're ready. So, one thing I want to look at. So, 1 burst, 2 bursts you need for anything that's just kind of normal, whatever. I get that. You do get a longer interval out of that. I will say one thing that I'm thinking about. Do they just not have anything that has... Ooh, that's tough. Maybe we should go at a lower cost? Because I don't think anything at this cost range really has any DC on it. Yeah, hold on a second. I think we'll go to 650. Just because I want to try to show you guys some of the resistance there as well. That's my bad for not realizing. 650. And we do that. And we get here. And we put it back. Because I feel like that's going to be a big deal for the shit that's actually at that cost. But as you can see, a longer burst. So, like, what is it? 1, 2, 3. Charges. Yeah, so now we're talking about a pretty big difference, even when we're trying to hit the cumulate. Actually, is that just 1, 2, 3, 4? Okay. In fact, you can see it trailing there when it actually hits. So 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, pretty much like 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 7, 7 or so right there. So definitely a lot more work in order to get that going. The grenade launcher, almost there. So that does mean that it's the birdlime one, as you can see, also does the stun down. And then of course the grenade launcher, decent accumulation, not too bad. Takes a little bit on some of these guys chunkier, but if we were hitting the Stardust memory stuff, they would have gotten stunned a lot faster. Obviously, even more work on the Hamahama. Anything that has higher DC like that, this thing's gonna have a hard time, and this is a support, mind you, right? And there's a couple that are gonna have a lot of stuff, and they're only gonna get harder to really chunk through. 700 is a little bit weird right now when it comes to the kind of suits that you're gonna be seeing, just because of a lot of the word meta. Things have been a little bit stagnant on both 700 and 750 when it comes to newer suits being introduced, because most of our current lineup is mostly being pumped through at like 650 and below, outside of a couple exceptions. Also, these ones for the anti-mobile suit are guidable a little bit, not a lot. Don't be doing crazy steering shit. You're not fucking Yamcha with a spirit ball and shit, but not bad. I think the one thing, actually, now I can show this. We do a good amount of boosting here, and obviously once you start getting into the air, try to lay off the ascent, unless you're just trying to maintain altitude, because you're gonna get that reduction to boost just by being in the air with hang time and boosting around anyway. So here, I'm Brabby. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So 10. And like I said, intervals are both being fired at once on a 60 mag. That's pretty nice. So we had the melee patterns, good old 2-swipe here. You got a thrust for the neutral, and now we can check out the heavy attack as well. Actually, hold on, before we do all that, aerial, what? It looks silly, but good, because you can actually get that to connect pretty well on the flip side and smack people upside the head at different angles, trying to hit them in their blind spot. This is a really, man, 2, 3, 4, you know, like 13, 14k plus naked without any kind of melee on it at all. So there's something to be said, obviously, about like, oh, there's a couple of people who have already been saying like you should probably focus on ranged, make sure that all your lead up into this is doing a good amount of damage, so that you're able to really able to make that last melee hit count. And to a certain degree, I do agree, because, and I feel like I agree for the wrong reasons, because this thing kind of has a hard time really pinning down shit. It's small, it's very good and self-sufficient in and of itself when it comes to keeping itself alive. Making other things dead, on the other hand, especially when you have a bunch of shit chasing you, and especially when we have a new infusion of G's running around with very heavy tracking weaponry and stuff, it does get a little bit tough. You know, this is a pretty flimsy suit in terms of defense. There's a couple ways that you can take it, you know, in terms of defense, in terms of putting in range, but all of it is going to be at the sacrifice of stunting your potential melee output. And there is something to be said about the F90 and the 91s being suits that tend to take advantage of a lot of just ugga dugga, you know, kind of just raw melee bullshit. Also, that charge is really fast. Like, I still got a little bit of that under after it was already knocked over for a hot second. Now, in that situation, like, that was like, what, 60, 700 or whatever. Let's see, just regular downswing. Regular downswing is 90, 50. This is another one of those situations where, like, you know, you can do it. It's probably not super necessary, though, because if you don't get the full thing, the last big hit's not gonna really count for much. So you might as well just do another downswing. Also, this is a situation which I think is really weird. This is not a 2 melee suit, even though it is a fucking raid. So in a lot of ways, the regular F90 is a bit more, I would say, geared towards being a raid. It has a regular stun. You know, it has the burst round with it as well with its rifle. So it has variable fire. And even though it does get an extra shot here for more accumulation, to be honest, sometimes you're gonna just come up short because a lot of this shit oh my lord, dude. A lot of this shit just has damage control and whatnot, right? So it's a little hard to see this being the more like favorable pick compared to other things. It really makes me wonder where this suit's gonna be in a week or so from now, when people start to really wrap their heads around just, you know, getting a better fix on this, when we start getting more G's into the mix. You know, I feel like a lot of people, if they weren't already, because I haven't really been in 700 and 750 a lot, are gonna start bringing back the Penelope and stuff, just because, oh, well, it's a suit that focuses on range a lot to do a lot of its damage before it can even really do any of this bullshit, you know what I'm saying? Well, I might as well just do the Penelope because it has an infinitely bigger repertoire of shit. It's leaning on beam more. It has really crazy tracking missiles, and then the downswing is actually not too bad while it literally gets to fly because it's a Minosky craft suit. That being said, as much as I'm bitching, not bad contributions to this, but again, the G and Penelope, the lock-on missiles are going to go through this a lot quicker anyway, on top of all the other stuff that they have that are in there. It feels a little bit unfair though, right? Because this is a 3-star suit. We're talking about a 5-star. But we are talking about 2 5-stars who have been around a little bit and whose usefulness has kind of fluctuated as other things have been introduced. And it's interesting that the more stuff that muddles like the waters here, the more relevant they become all over again. But we do have some matches. I'll be honest with you, some of these were rough. The first round that we got was probably one of the better ones that we had, just from trying to get some quick footage of this. So we'll be footing that round right around here. Alright, maiden voyage in the Xeon F90. Great value, good style colors. It's true. I said instead of it being the whole head, it's just a little front plate. Oh, that heavy. Yeah. Oh shit, I don't want to jump. Shouldn't have waited. I fucking it didn't come out. Damn it. Like, it sucks that you can lose your charge shots and inputs in between the transition into hang time on flat booster suits. The only time that doesn't really happen is if you have like mobile shooting. But the instance for mobile shooting on a suit like this, it feels a little bit weird just because like unless you're already pursuing someone when it happens, you're probably already charging up and doing shit with your melee. Just tired of looking up. Oh, he says Babises are gonna be annoying though. What is that over there? Oh, that's the full armor. Nice, I'm gonna run for it. Fire. I'm trying to capture that. Is he still alive? Yeah, he is. Ooh, those are guided. Thruster mods are pretty nice. If you have Ox Burner, that would probably be for the best to put on there too. Just to try to maintain, especially because you can transition into a downswing once you start descending more. Let's... Yeah, this thing is fucking fast. Figure was going. Yeah, this is an inevitability after getting the support. There's a pretty big space between them too. That was our round in the new F90 here. In general, I like how responsive this suit is. I love a lot of the miniaturized suits and just the sheer speed of it all. But I don't know how I feel about a lot of them because, you know, the F90, I've had great rounds. That round in this thing in particular felt really good, but also in a lot of respects, half the time it's like, well, I'm doing stuff. I probably could be doing more, and I feel like in a lot of cases, there are other raids that I probably would be doing more, as much as I don't really have a lot of confidence in myself when it comes to running, you know, raids or more melee-based suits in general with that kind of objective in mind. But this is going to be a new reality for a while. You know, the Denanzan and all that is already out. That's doing it for the generals. I'm assuming we're only going to get more of those as we get deeper into like F90, 91, and you know, I think once we get to Anniversary Range, we're probably going to be flirting with victory a little bit. We'll see. But this is a nice suit. One thing I want to see real quick. So you can get out of that last slash, thank goodness. And actually, towards that regard. And the block too. Yeah. So you do have a little bit more flexibility. You don't have to be out of the whole thing, and in this case, you don't even have to you don't even have to boost. You can just stand in a spot and get yourself out, and and hold things down if too many people start to come towards you. So that is nice. The fact that it has such a laundry list of things means that it does have a lot of ways to respond to certain things. But even when it does, you know, all of that uses boost. Boost is lifeblood for any cost range, but especially at this one, you know, using all that to get out of this from the moment to moment, unless your team's really responsive, you're mostly just putting yourself into danger. Which is why a lot of people I feel are just going to be doing a lot of midlining, throwing out their missiles and barfing, and then eventually maybe trying to fly in for, you know, the good old smacky sometimes. But again, probably more scavenger-like, more like the Rigazzi, waiting for, you know, shit to go wrong for the enemy, and then suddenly being like, ooh, don't mind if I do, bam, you know, and just getting in there, maybe canceling, and then moving on. And I wonder if that's going to change going forward, if they're going to make any adjustments to this thing. But for now, it's a good suit. I think if you missed out on some of the other, you know, like Penelope or some of the other more aggressive raids at this cost, in a situation where, especially at 750, raids have been bullied out of their position, it really makes me wonder if this suit's really going to make that much of a difference. And it's interesting to me that this G and Penelope, especially with this G having a reintroduction banner or a reroll banner, is not being introduced to level 2 right now. I wonder if they really are going to be super shy in trying to bring those into the next cost. Maybe they think that it's going to foul things out too much. Maybe they want to reintroduce or introduce more things like this, like the new F90, which is there, before they really get into that, just to see how much it changes things. And it will be interesting to see. I think if I had more stuff on both of my accounts. I do have the F91, at least on Gus. I'll probably be seeing what it's looking like over the course of the week, especially because it just gives me an excuse to be in the 91. The 91 is just a really fun suit, and I feel like even from what we were doing, this thing is very easy to hold down in the 91, and it's like, oh dog, because it's a fucking general, right? You have type advantage, you should be hunting this thing, and like, yeah. But there are a lot of raids like the PZZ and a couple other things where like it's kind of a joint effort. You know, there are certain moments where you can really have their number, but I don't think this is really at that point, for better or worse. And I feel like for a lot of raids that aren't, you know, it is very much a rough thing to their disadvantage. It's very feast or famine when it comes to that kind of shit. So we'll see. I feel like there's going to be other people who really appreciate just the amount of stuff like the active guard, like some of the other features on this, especially with the mobile firing, you know, when you hit threshold, that are probably going to do a lot better than I am in this. I don't think that's really hard because I'm not very good at this game, but I do like talking about it. So that is the long and short of the F90 MZ type. It'll be interesting to see what the next one's going to be, because now we do have a general support and raid. We have the entire rest of the alphabet series for them to entertain putting in here over time. Obviously, we're probably going to be getting more F91 suits, because we're definitely not done with that series either, let alone, you know, if we eventually get crossbone and shit like that too. So, until next time, this is Goose the 13th. I'll talk to you guys in the next video.